up, you guys? Rasatiat here in Singapore, and it is the Night Owl podcast. So welcome back, you guys. Thank you so much. Today has been interesting, honestly. Lots of deep conversations with only two of my clients today, so it was a very easy day. Okay, that's not easy. It's a lot of emotions, but it wasn't as jam-packed as it usually is, so I'm grateful. But even so, I cannot express what it means to me to be in a position to be there for people. And it's these conversations where you allow me into your life and you share with me your deepest, darkest moments, those places where you don't feel any hope and you're really, really wondering if there's any point to going on. And I really appreciate you allowing me to be there for you. It's on that note actually that I want to talk a little bit, because it's like an emerging theme that I'm seeing. When you tell me that something hurt you, usually you're in a place where you feel incensed about it. You feel a little bit angry, right? Because how dare these people tell you these things, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to call somebody. I need to talk to them. I need to sort out my feelings. I got you, right? So you call me and we talk, and you start off angry usually, because that's how you start letting the words out of your system, just forcing them out there because you're mad. And at some point during that conversation, I hear your voice crack, and I hear you start to quiver a little bit as you tell me, these things, you couldn't believe them. You had no idea that it would end up this way. You never saw it coming. You felt so hurt and betrayed and confused and lost. And I get all of that. And it's in that tsunami of emotions when you're telling me these things that I really feel for you. From wherever you are on the phone with me, I feel all those emotions that you're describing. I feel that sense of loss and that despair that you're explaining to me. And I need you guys to understand, whether you're talking to me or you're talking to a confidant, maybe you're talking to your mom, maybe you're talking to your best friend, I need you to understand something. As much as you want to feel bad for feeling offended, feel bad for not being able to take more than you did, feel bad for maybe not standing up when you wanted to stand up. I mean, understand you did the best you could in every moment. If you could have done better, and if you had the guts to do better, if you felt strong enough to do better, you would have done better. But you couldn't in that moment, because that's just where you were, and that's okay. I need you guys to learn to forgive yourself. I need you guys to understand the moment that you made that decision, the moment that you went through that painful situation, you didn't stand up like you could have. I mean, we've all seen movies where they stood up, and some people didn't stand up, and some people were killed over it. Like, you never know until you're in the situation itself. And it's real easy to point at people who have been through rape situations, have been through domestic violence situations, have been through random, I was stuck up at gunpoint situation. It could be anything, honestly. You never know what you are capable of until you're standing, literally standing in the other person's shoes. So that does not give you the right to point fingers and tell people you should have done, you should have done, you should have done. You need to just listen and understand. But for the person who's going through that, for the person who's relaying this information to a confidant, to a counselor, to a therapist, whatever, for the person telling their story, I need you to understand something. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to open your mouth. It takes a lot of strength to get the words out. It means opening yourself up to the world, a world that you've learned not to trust because of your situation. Opening yourself up to that same world and letting them know, hey, I'm still here. I'm in pain, but I'm still here. I'm ready to fight again, but I'm still here. I need you to understand. Courage takes many different forms. Courage means sometimes you stand up and sometimes you stay quiet. Courage means you pick your battles based on what you understand of the situation. Inaction does not mean that you're weak or that you're stupid or that you are, a pushover, that you're easy to manipulate. It doesn't mean any of those things. Inaction can look very, very different for different situations. From my point of view, when I told my mother that I had been sexually abused, it looked like inaction on my part. She was dealing with the perpetrator, though. She had to come into contact with him like almost on a daily basis for a while. And what I didn't realize was she had to be quiet in order to understand more about that person, she had to stay silent in order to not draw so much attention where it would blow out of proportion and she would lose control of it. She had to do it from a different standpoint. It didn't mean that she didn't believe me, which I believed at a point in time. It didn't mean that she condoned the act as if that's not what she was saying at all, but I didn't get it because I was staying on the other side. I was a different victim than she was. But she was still using her courage and she was still using her voice in the best way she knew how while she tried to keep our family together. And I understood. It was difficult. For me, because I had been through that sexual abuse situation, because I've been abused in so many different ways in my life, I've been emotionally abused. I have been physically abused. I've been beaten up. I've been strangled. I've been in so many of those situations where, for me, when it came down to my kids, that means my stepkids and my biological child, for them to continually see me in a position where I was being talked down to and I was being, what is the word? I was being abused. I hate using that word over and over again. I was being told off all the time. Nothing I did was ever good enough. I was constantly crying and upset, and I was constantly hiding with the kids because I felt better when I was around them. I didn't want to be around my husband. I did not feel good enough to be around him. He made me feel so stupid and so dumb and so weak. But I realized at some point that I could not stay quiet not to piss him off, because that's what I had been doing for so many years. I would not say things out loud because I didn't want to piss him off because I knew what would happen afterwards. Instead, I stayed quiet, and that was one type of courage. And eventually I was looking at my kids and I was like, you know what? I'm not worried about disappointing my husband anymore. I'm not worried about protecting his feelings anymore. I need to protect these kids, because if I don't say something and if I don't stand up and walk away, I'm teaching them that this is normal. And that came from my own childhood abuse, because I thought it was normal. And I had to stop. I had to stand up and put the brakes on this generational curse I was getting ready to hand down, and I took a stand. So sometimes speaking up is courage and sometimes staying quiet is courage. And it really just depends on where you are in your life and what you think you're capable of handling. And yeah, sometimes it's the fear talking, but you don't know. You don't know. Everything is terrifying to you. I get it. But I need you guys to understand something. Please, please give yourself the grace to learn this. Admitting to someone that they hurt you does not make you weak. It does not mean that you have a low pain threshold. None of that. It means you have the courage to let them love you better by telling them what works and what doesn't. If you think back to how to learn to drive a car, there was someone there with you who had to teach you what you can and can't do, and then had to teach you why you shouldn't do those things. Maybe it was something to do with the car itself. Maybe if you jerk the wheel too hard to the right, you will lock your wheels up. You could run the risk of hydroplaning in a storm. Any of those things. That comes from experience, passing down experience, right? They've got to be able to correct you. When we were learning dance, they had to tell you, hey, this is not the correct form. You're going to hurt yourself if you continue doing it like this. When it comes to martial arts, they got to tell you, when you grab to get away from your attacker or whatever, you can't just grab willy-nilly. You can't just punch willy-nilly. You got to really tighten up your fist. You got to hold your fist right or you break your thumb. They got to tell you those things in an effort for you to become better and stronger and faster. But we don't think about those things when it comes to like being in a relationship, because we don't think about it as teaching the other person how to love you. It comes across as criticism for not being good enough. That's not what it is, though. You might be great, but what if it could be even better? What if there was something small that keeps nagging at you in the back of your head? If you just said something about it, it would go away, and maybe it could be just great. It could be less noise. You could enjoy more. Maybe it's a nickname that really pisses you off because somewhere along the line it was not a loving nickname. And somebody picked it up and started using it, and it feels like an attack every time that word comes up, and it's just a matter of changing the word. It's not a big deal. I went through that with my mom, too. My mom thought it was funny to call me goofy. Yes, I was a gangly thing. I was all elbows and knees. I was really, really tall, super uncoordinated, and back then the word was unco. You're so unco. Like, you're retarded, you're uncoordinated. And she used to call me goofy, and oh my God, I took such offense to that because Goofy really is goofy. He really truly is uncoordinated, and he is not the hero that everybody wants to be with. He's not the guy that everyone thinks is cool. He's the one everyone laughs at all the time, and that's the meaning I attributed it to when my mom called me goofy. And as much as I would sulk and make a face and start crying and just get upset whenever she called me goofy, she didn't stop, and I had to figure out how to get over it. Eventually, she just stopped calling me anything at all. And I don't know what hurt more, the fact that she removed that playful aspect or the fact that she was calling me goofy. But if I didn't say something, it would be difficult. And it took me many, many years, like until after I got married and divorced and had a baby and came home. And it wasn't until then, like 20 years after the fact, that I had a conversation with her. And I said, there were little things that you used to say that really hurt my feelings. And she was under the impression I just hated her. It wasn't that I hated her. Certain things that she did hurt my feelings. And if I had just told her in plain language, that hurt my feelings, maybe our relationship would be different. Maybe she would have taken offense to it back then. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't have taken me 20 years to make peace. And thank God I had the chance. I've had the chance to make peace and continually have the chance to make peace because she's still alive. But how many of us don't get that chance? I need you to understand, along with that roller coaster of emotions that comes with this heavy decision of what to do and what not to do. I need you guys to love who you are, love where you are, what it is that you're going through right now. It's all teaching you more about yourself. I need you to not blame yourself for not being strong enough to not be affected by these things. If it affects you, just say something. And maybe it works and maybe it doesn't work out. And yes, that's the scariest place in the world. But more than that, don't beat yourself up for what you can and can't do. What you weren't able to do at one moment. What you did and then just kind of backfired on you. The point is, you had to try. You had to try. For those of you who are slowly going through the stages of grief because you've finally been able to leave a very difficult situation behind you, I need you to not kick yourself every time you look back and said, I could have left here and I could have left here and I could have left here and I could have left here, but I didn't. I need you guys to forgive the person in each of those situations that could have got up and left back then. Forgive that person for not having the courage, for not being able, for not seeing a way out back then. Forgive yourself. Trust me, it's not easy, but it's really, really helpful. If you have to pretend. Pretend that you're going back to see the girl that lived back then, that was in that moment, that suffered and endured the best they could. And I want you to imagine loving that person because they did the best they could. Because at the time, that's all they knew. They didn't know better. Because yes, hindsight is 20/20. It's very clear when you look back. But when you're in it, when you're feeling it all day long, oh, it's hard to think straight. It's hard to be strategic about anything. It's part of the reason Bruce Lee says, you can't fight when you're angry. You're dangerous when you're angry and fight because you're not actually landing anything anywhere. You just fight blindly, angrily, just fighting. There's no strategy to it, which means you can't win. You will be overpowered and then you get more mad and then you don't know what to do. It's hard to think straight when you're upset. Forgive yourself for being upset. Forgive yourself for being in a situation in the first place. You did what you could. The best that you knew how. It does not make you weak. It does not make you stupid. It does not make you a waste of space. God, I've heard so many of these insults as people relay their stories to me. You're a piece of shit. You're a waste of space. Like, who would ever love you? If I don't love you, who do you think would love you? Like, all of that guilt-tripping, shaming. Oh. I need you to forgive that girl, that boy. As in yourself, your younger version of yourself. Even if it was last week, I don't care. That person back then. Forgive that person. Understand they did the best they could under the circumstances. Know that you know better now and pray you have the courage to do something about it if, and I hope you don't, if you find yourself in a similar position where someone is attacking you. Maybe with their words, maybe with their fists, maybe sexually. You get into a position where you think you're going to make love to somebody and it doesn't quite turn out that way. It becomes violent or angry. I've heard of people talking about, oh, some of the girls, they like to play rape. Yeah, okay. That's kind of scary to me, but I don't see the passion in that. I don't see the love there. I don't see how that is a way to show that you love. So I understand passionate sex. I understand rough sex. I don't understand playing rape. Because the word itself does not sound sexy at all. I understand people want to feel like, caveman times, you just like throw your girls over your shoulder and go have that. Yeah, okay, I understand that, but that's not rape. That's consensual. Okay, not in caveman times it wasn't, but it could be consensual now. We know better. We have the language now. I need you guys to love yourselves so much that you can forgive yourselves for not knowing better in the past. And understand that there is a chance you may repeat your history. Yep, it could be. Some patterns are hard to break. Some patterns are very hard to break. I remember so many times where I stood up to the person that I was with and I loved them with all my heart and I wanted nothing more than be with them the rest of my life because I'm a one-man girl. I'm not going to go fuck around. I'm super loyal, like beyond loyal. I don't know. Like imprinting level loyal. And I remember so many times I'd tell them, hey, you did this and it hurt my feelings. And they'd be like, oh my God, you're so, and the start would start off right then. It would be a barrage of insults and how stupid I was and how fucked up I am. And how could I even expect for anyone to love me? Like, why? You're ridiculous. You're stupid. You're imagining things. And immediately, rather than stand my ground, I would want to end the fight and get back to something I considered normal. So I started apologizing profusely and I would promise that I would never bring it up again. And I wouldn't, I could do better. I could be better. I could learn to get over it. It's not that big a deal after. You're right. I just don't want to fight anymore. I've done that too. And there were so many times where I thought, nope, I'm going to stand my ground. God damn it. No, I'm not going to let this person back in my life. No. And then you're in that feeling and you're in that space and you're worried that, maybe they won't love you and maybe you'll never find a love like this before. The idea not being that you want to find a love like this, something better, right? But back then you're like, you're right, I'm not good enough and who would ever love me and how could I possibly expect to be taken care of because I can't even take care of myself and all these little things bother me. Like, how can I get it. I need you to love yourselves. I need you to understand you did the best you could back then. You didn't know better back then. You do know better now. You just need to pray for the courage to stand your ground like you've always wanted to stand your ground. And maybe this time you'll hold it. And you won't get swept up by the insults. And you won't get swept up by the emotions and the guilt tripping and the shaming. That you realize that that's coming from their own insecurities. It's not about you at all. And if they felt good enough to change, they would change, right? So when you confess, when you come out with your story, when you tell somebody for the first time because you're looking for counsel, you're looking for a shoulder to lean on, you're looking for some support, I need you to tell your story without apologizing. Don't apologize for the things you went through. They were difficult. Forgive yourself. That's where the healing starts. Understand that person in that moment, in that time, no longer exists. You're you now. But back then, that was a different person. And yes, they could have used support back then if they had the courage and were strong enough or felt like they had enough options to be able to do what you're doing now. Nothing grows in isolation. Don't keep yourself isolated from the rest of the world. Speak up. Tell people. If not for other people so that they don't fall into the same traps you did, for yourself. Because the more you tell your story, the more confident you become that you can stand your ground the next time. The safer you feel with the fact that you can trust what is normal and what is not normal. What's okay for you and what's not okay for you. So please, I know what it could mean when you admit your guilt. I know what it could mean when you admit that something happened and it wasn't good and it didn't feel right. When you go to tell someone that they themselves are hurting you, when you tell a third party that, you've been through this and you're trying really hard to find solid ground. I need you to understand It doesn't make you a bad person or a weak person to have gone through that. Quite the opposite. So thank God that you survived. You're still alive and kicking it with us. Forgive yourself for whatever you've had to endure, for allowing it to happen, for not standing your ground, for not whatever. It's okay. We do the best we can in each of these situations. And like I said, when you feel, it's really hard to think. I really hope talking about this today and this podcast episode helped you kind of gain some clarity. I need you guys to understand that all of us go through this roller coaster of emotions throughout our lives. And sometimes we have easeful, peaceful moments, and sometimes it's just pure chaos. But either way, know that staying quiet and keeping it to yourself doesn't actually help you grow. It actually exacerbates the problem. It makes all those thoughts about whether it's right or wrong really loud in your head, but it doesn't give you any clarity. You need people around you. We are a social race. We need people around us. We need to be able to talk about these things in order to understand if it's right or wrong, in order to, to point out something that's happening as a culture that's not okay. We need the ability to speak up. So if you have any questions or concerns, please drop them in the comments below. I really do want to hear from you. If you would rather speak to me privately, you're welcome to DM me. Let's talk. But until then, you guys, it's okay. You are all right. You are enough as you are. I need you to believe that, though. I love you. Bye.